Hey, how's it going, guys? Jack and Matt here with the Toaster Bros, and today we're going to be doing a $450 retro gaming PC.
We made an unboxing video of this 15-year-old gaming PC, but now we're going to use its case to make a retro, modern gaming PC. But before we get into that, let's hear a word from today's sponsor.
Shabam.
Sponsor! Woo. Today's video is brought to you by GVGMall, an online marketplace to gain access to some really awesome discounted game keys, and more specifically, Windows 10 licenses.
And if you're interested, use the link down below and buy the Windows 10 Pro activation using our code TB20 to get 20% off.
All you have to do to activate Windows 10 license is buy the key by using code TB20 and then throw the Windows 10 key into your Windows 10 activation on the system you wish to install it in, and boom, you have activated Windows 10 and you no longer have to look at that horrible watermark in the bottom right corner.
So thanks again to GVGMall for sponsoring this video.
Let's get right into the video, shall we?
So if you guys check the eye in the top right corner, we actually did a video on this PC where we unboxed it. We actually played games on it. It says Windows 98. So this PC was built estimated around 2004. So it is about 15 plus years old, and we are going to be giving it all new bones today.
Now, unfortunately, when we got this computer, it showed up with a couple of cracks on the handle, which will probably show right here or some B-roll. But yeah, there is some damage to this case, which is kind of sad. But we are still going to make this thing look as good as we can. And well, it has this cool handle, which should still work. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and take this thing apart at first. And then from there, we'll probably talk about how we're going to use these parts to make an awesome retro gaming PC. So let's take this apart and then talk about the parts. Take it apart and talk about the parts. I like that. There you go.
Take it apart and talk about the parts. Okay, guys, so now what we have here is just basically a bare chassis. We just have a bare chassis case. So this is now basically ready to accept a hopefully micro or full ATX motherboard. So we just got to pop out the old I/O and then put our new one in and then do some cable management and whatnot and then start building this monster. Alright guys, so for the processor, we decided, like we said, to keep this build very cheap. So this is a Ryzen 1200 AF. These can be had for like $70 something on Newegg, so really awesome deal. You're supposed to get about 10 FPS more than the original 1200, so just a quad core processor, but you know, hey, it's a good processor. We have the Gigabyte B450M DS3H. We kind of just went with this honestly because, you know, it supports 3rd gen, which isn't really super necessary for this, but it's a really good board and they're very, very cheap. Honestly, the main reason we really went for it was we like to go cheap here, you know, we're budget guys. Big thanks to Zadak for sending over this Spark RGB kit. So this is RGB RAM and it's 16 gigs at 3200 megahertz. Honestly, some pretty decent looking stuff and it's very cheap, although we may have to use some alternate links because this stuff can be kind of hard to find at sometimes. So hopefully we'll have this stuff in the link description down below, but if not, we'll take care of you guys and have something else. Here we have an ADATA M.2 SSD. So we actually don't even know for sure if this one's gonna work. We're probably gonna have alternate in the description down below, but we are pretty sure this will work. Like we said, we'll have another 128 gig one, probably another ADATA or Silicon Power, something along those lines. So just use what we put in the description down below because it'll be good.
Now you might be wondering what's in this pinkish bag. Well, we went back to our roots and got an RX 580, ladies and gentlemen. This is a VisionTech RX 580. I believe it is an 8 gig model. It actually is an 8 gig model, so that's actually really cool. Normally we just stick with the 4 gig models, but yeah, this was around $100. Really good value. Of course, we've talked about the RX 580 so many times here on the channel. Really good used option, and pairing it with the Ryzen 3 1200 AF will be a pretty balanced budget gaming PC build. Now what we have right here, ladies and gentlemen, is something that's really hard to find right now, a power supply. This is the EVGA 550 watt power supply. We had to do some digging to get this power supply and pay a premium for it, normally around 50 or 60 bucks for a power supply nowadays. They're pretty pricey, but if you can get your hands on, well, whatever's in the links in the description down below, that'd be the best option for something like this. But again, 550 watts is more than enough for this build. You could probably go with 450 watts if you wanted to, but decided to go for this unit because it was in stock. Now, no retro mod is complete without upgrading the I/O, and what we have right here is a 5¼ inch bay and a 3¼ inch bay that comes with some added features. So basically what you're gonna do is where normally the DVD drive goes, or a floppy drive in this case, you could upgrade it with some USB 3, a SD card reader, a bunch of different stuff to add to the functionality of this build. So that's mainly what we went with here because we have all the headers we need on this motherboard, and we might not be able to get the front USB to work with the way it's wired in being an older case. So we opted for this solution because, well, we can get more USB 3 and, well, it's gonna look a lot nicer. So how about we go ahead, put this mod together and see how she performs.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, now that we have this retro gaming PC all put together, let's talk about some benchmarks real quick. Now, the main focus of this PC was the mod, but this also gave us an opportunity to test the Ryzen 3 1200AF, which, by most accounts, is a pretty decent value processor. Now, yes, if you do have options like the Ryzen 3 3100 in stock in your region for $99, you're getting way more performance than the $20 price difference has to offer, so I definitely recommend you opt that route. But in some areas, the Ryzen 3 3100 and 3300X are hard to find, and the 1600AF is becoming increasingly more rare. So this processor might have some validity, especially when you consider it being a AM4 processor and the ability for you to basically jump into the Ryzen platform and have a really solid upgrade path. In terms of benchmarks, we decided to test 3 games: Fortnite, Call of Duty Warzone, and Rainbow Six Siege. First up with Call of Duty Warzone, on a mixture of medium-high settings, we were able to get an average of around 60 FPS. There were some dips into the 50s, which was kind of to be expected. A normal quad-core CPU nowadays is kind of cutting it close when it comes to a gaming PC, but this setup actually performed pretty well at 1080p. I wouldn't expect to be able to do any content creation or any sort of heavy video editing on this type of machine, but in terms of playing games like Modern Warfare with lower settings, and then also diving into some of the more esports focused titles that we're testing later in this benchmark run, it's perfectly adequate for it, especially coming in at around $70. You could lower the settings on Call of Duty Warzone a little bit more than I did and probably get well over 60 FPS, and also we are playing on the Rumble match mode, which is basically like a 50v50 in Call of Duty Warzone, so it is very demanding. Some of our other systems do have issues running over 60 FPS at times, so do keep that in mind, but overall I think it was a pretty solid performance for the RX 580 and Ryzen 3 1200 combo. Next up in Fortnite, we got well over 100 FPS. This actually would work pretty well for a little high refresh rate Fortnite machine if you wanted to get a 144Hz monitor. Now, there were some stutters loading in all the assets when the match first started in Fortnite, but after that, we were averaging well over 100 FPS without any real dips. When you get into some combat situations, you might dip a little bit below 100, but it's still more than playable, and for a $450 PC, it's actually more than I expected, and that RX 580 is still a great option, especially on the used market. If you're somebody who doesn't like to buy used and is willing to spend a little bit more money, the 1650 Super is pretty equivalent to an RX 580, but the 8GB model that we got for $100 is just a great deal. It still continues to be one of the best value GPUs you can get on the used market. And lastly, with Rainbow Six Siege and what looks like their new built-in benchmark tool, which actually looks really nice, we averaged over 200 FPS on very high settings. It just goes to show you, if you want to play games like Rainbow Six Siege, CSGO, Valorant, or any sort of like esports first-person shooter title out there, this would be a great little computer for that, and I highly recommend it. Yes, the parts were initially chosen for this mod, but if you're looking just to build a computer in general, this combination of the RX 580 and 1200AF is not a bad little option, especially if you can snipe an RX 580 or a 570 at sub $100. You can make this build even cheaper and have a lot of room to grow in terms of upgrading. So that pretty much wraps up the benchmarks, guys. I'm very impressed with this PC for the money. How about we go ahead and bring Jackson back in here to wrap this video up?
Alright guys, so even though this thing actually is a retro sleeper build, for $450 it actually performs really well.
It maxes out pretty much any game you throw at it. We did have to lower some of the settings in Call of Duty Warzone because just a quad core nowadays in some games can be pushing it a little bit, but I'm definitely glad we went with 16 gigs of RAM because that is definitely starting to become the minimum standard nowadays if you want to play newer titles. So keep that in mind if you're looking to build a new PC, but overall performance-wise, I was very impressed. In Warzone, Fortnite, and Rainbow Six Siege, we were getting very playable results, and this is a nice little, very powerful sleeper PC.
One of my favorite parts about this is the fact that we do have a working DVD drive, which we actually had to swap out the 5.25-inch USB drive that we thought we had. It was actually 3.5-inch, just like the other one that we installed up here. But the good news is we do have working USB 3 ports in the front. We do have working audio jacks in the front, so that is nice to have. And of course, we have the full arrangement of USB and all kinds of other ports in the back of the PC as well on this really stylish retro case.
And temperatures weren't half bad. Using this one front fan here as an exhaust actually has worked pretty well. We were only getting about 60 degrees Celsius on the GPU and CPU when we were gaming, so that's very impressive. It was really easy to build in this thing. Just cleaning it up a little bit makes a very unique PC build for somebody who's interested in something like this. I'd be interested to see in the comment section down below if you guys have done something similar and if you've used different cases. They're actually really cool to do these types of mods, so I'd love to see what you did.
So don't forget, if you want to purchase any of these parts, use the links in the description down below. They're affiliate links, so they do help us out a lot. Also check out our other 2 YouTube channels and also our Twitch channel. We'd really appreciate you guys checking those out. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
We'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye. Adios.